Hello and welcome everybody. It is in fact your boy Sir Egwood back at it again with another. I say these are reviews. I just kind of yap about an album that I either like or don't like. It will most likely be albums I like because I don't like being negative and shit. Again, I kind of sound nasally just because hay fever's a bitch. But today I'm going to be talking about the new self-titled Rivers of Nihil album. For those of you who don't know, I'm keeping all this in one take because funny. Rivers of Nihil were formed in 2009 in Reading, Pennsylvania, in that place over there that has the cheeseburgers, tariffs, and racism. And for the most part, they started off just kind of like any other progressive metal, kind of proggy leading death metal band. They signed to Metal Blade Records in 2012 and then blew up 6 years later with the release of their third album, Where Owls Know My Name, which went viral on the internet because saxophone. That's the main thing that got it, is the saxophone, because it was so left field and random. A lot of people were kind of calling them the atheist of the modern day, if atheists were millennials, that kind of stuff. But the talent is there, the songwriting is there, and it was only a matter of time before they blew up anyway. But after the release of Where Owls Know My Name, they toured all over the world, all over Europe, Australia, America, and then COVID happened, and COVID sucked a big fat one. But during that time, they released their follow-up album, which was widely looked forward to with The Work. It was a solid album. I liked it. It didn't quite have the same memorability and catchiness as Where Owls Know My Name had, but it was still a really good follow-up, I would say. But it was the year after that album came out that the biggest change in the band would happen, with founding vocalist Jake Diffenbach leaving the band due to his hearing loss and being replaced by their bass player Adam Biggs, who has been with the band since the beginning, same with Brody, but he has taken over on lead vocals and has done since, but this is their first recorded album with him on lead vocals. This was preceded by a few singles, including some ones that didn't make it on the album like Hellbirds, but for the most part, most of the singles were released on the album. And joining Adam is founding guitarist Brody Utley, as well as drummer Jared Klein, and guitarist and vocalist Andy Williams, who has been with the band since about 2022. All three of these guys perform vocals on the album alongside Adam, but Adam is still very much front and center. This album is an important one for the band because not only is it the first album with this milestone vocalist change, it is their fifth album overall, their first self-titled album, which normally when bands self-title an album, that usually has some kind of significance. But it's also the first album to not be part of the seasonal theme that the previous releases have been, especially with Where Owls Know My Name being kind of fall-autumn themed, and The Work being themed after winter, as well as the two first and second albums being spring and summer. So it left people with a lot of questions. How is Adam going to sound in his own right? How is the concepts and lyrics going to form around this one, with it being not part of the pre-established formula? But that's something that Rivers of Nihil have been very good at, is taking our expectations and very much subverting them, or at the very least, kind of keeping that same formula, but fucking around with it in ways that you didn't expect. Like, oh, you think the beautiful instrumental part's going to go here, but no, it's going to go here. And that kind of thing. They've been very good at that, and they definitely do that on this album. With the intro track, the Suborbital Blues, hitting you right out of the gate with massive chugs and huge soaring cleans that are absolutely beautiful to listen to, and that is going to set the stage for pretty much the entire album. You've got a good mix of all the kind of influences and genres that Rivers of Nihil play, in that there is huge old school death metal influence. There's little sprinklings and seasonings of deathcore in there as well, with some of the groovy kind of drop time signatures and breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. But everything flows so well, and that's in part due to the incredible talent of the instrumentalists here. Especially Jared. He is an incredible drummer. His fills, his backbeat, as well as doing cleans on this as well. It's really just kind of insane to kind of imagine them piecing all of this together. It feels so natural to hear when it's being played, both in the studio and live, but I can only imagine how painstaking this must have been to actually piece together and keep everything running smoothly without having any kind of awkward pauses or transitions and any of that kind of stuff. But speaking of the performances, everything sounds a lot more alive than it does on the work, which the work was still a solid album, don't get me wrong, but everything just sounds really rejuvenated with this album, which I suppose could come from a multitude of factors, including the change in vocalist, as well as the world kind of returning to what is supposed to be normal compared to COVID, and then playing live again and leaving the pandemic with a massively increased fan base, bigger shows, bigger everything. But I suppose in a way that must have weighed on the expectations for this album as well. But I would say these expectations are met. Everything that you like about this band, especially from Where Owls Know My Name onwards, is still here, and everything is just done better than ever. The compositions are tighter. Everything feels like the fat's been trimmed. I would say the fat has very much been trimmed. You still get those little extra flourishes here and there. For example, in the outro to Despair Church, which is about halfway through the album, you get an absolutely beautiful piano and saxophone piece that fades the track out, and it's really nice. And given that that's where the album kind of ends halfway, it's a really good mini break, as it were, before the last half of the album, with songs like American Death and Evidence really just smacking you in the face, especially American Death, which is probably the lone kind of death metal straightforward song on the album, which has been in the let's try that again, which has been kind of known to happen, but again they kind of throw you for a loop there in terms of where it's going to be in the track listing as well as the overall compositions of the song. They've said in the past that a lot of these kind of more straightforward songs are their kind of, alright, you want straightforward death metal, well, here you go, here's your straightforward death metal, you happy now? But even then, they still absolutely nail it, and I could see songs like American Death being a live staple. I have, in fact, caught it live. They did play it last year when I had seen them with Distant. It was either last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. They had played American Death and had the t-shirt, which the t-shirt's amazing as well. And it's a straight up ripper. And I feel like that could be a really good live staple, especially if you kick off with it at the beginning of a set, especially if you're in a support slot. If you kick off with American Death, that's going to show you everything that Rivers of Nihil is about. It's going to show you the heavy stuff and make you go, oh, I want to check out more of that. I want to see what more this band can do. But everything, again, a lot of this is me kind of yapping and waffling and all that kind of stuff. Everything just feels like the fat's been very much trimmed. While the previous album, The Work, was clocking in at over an hour, this one is a svelte 50 minutes, over 10 tracks, which leads to about an average length of about 5 minutes. There isn't really a song that goes under 4 minutes. They keep everything simple, they keep everything concise, but they still allow the extra instrumentation to really shine through, especially with, as I mentioned earlier, the clean guitar sections and saxophone sections and the piano sections, as well as a little bit of banjo in there as well. But it's not to say that the metal elements are even greater than they were previously, especially in the production point. Everything feels really balanced. The bass is very present in the mix. The vocals are recorded incredibly well, and the vocal ranges on this album, in terms of both cleans and screams, it is just everything's turned up to 11. And overall, I would dare say this is Rivers of Nile's best work, to be honest. I really don't have much of any complaints, to be honest. I would say it's the penultimate Rivers of Nile album, which I think the band definitely had that confidence going into it, hence why they self-titled it. A lot of bands don't really self-title albums anymore these days, and when you do, it usually means a big significance, a big change, which there have been a lot of big changes with this album, as previously explained, with their departing lead vocalist, the lineup changes after that as well. But overall, this album is everything you would want out of this band, but just done better. Everything just feels a lot more natural, and Rivers of Nile are very confident in their sound now. they're not afraid to kind of throw you for a loop, especially with like the outro to Despair Church, the saxophone solo, the extended one in Water and Time, just beautiful. And it just goes to show that the saxophone is not a meme. It's a very real part of the sound, and I definitely hope it continues to be. It's different, it's refreshing, especially in a time where old school death metal and deathcore are really at their peak. The rising tide raises all ships, and you've seen that with the ascent of Rivers of Nihil to playing little small rooms to then playing these big rooms. I'd seen them in the Barrowlands supporting Ingested and Lorna Shore. It was incredible. And I fully believe that Rivers of Nihil could headline the Barrowlands. I absolutely believe it. But as long as they keep throwing us for a loop, it's going to keep being interesting listens, especially when you get to the self-titled closing track, Rivers of Nihil. I thought it was going to be a kind of, a little bit more relaxed, maybe a moody instrumental, really show off their kind of prog prowess. But it comes in and it kicks you right in the face, just like the opener did with the Suborbital Blues. And it completely threw me for a loop, and I'm pleasantly surprised. But everything about this album just screams a band that is confident, that knows who they are, what they sound like, and where they're going to go in the future. And I cannot wait to hear more music like this, see them live again. I know they're on tour in the US. I'm sure they'll be around Europe and the UK and everywhere else very soon. But if you liked anything that Rivers of Nihil, if you liked anything that Rivers of Nihil has done before, then you absolutely need to pick up this album. Get it everywhere, stream it, buy t-shirts, do whatever. This band deserves it. They have worked their arses off for this album, and I'm very glad that it came out the way it did. It is the penultimate Rivers of Nihil album, and it is definitely getting a place in my top albums of the year. Everybody has really locked in, and it's paid off, especially on the vocal front. Adam sounds savage, and everybody else with their cleans. It provides not only the stark contrast and the break from the heavier sections, but it also gives a little bit of accessibility without the whole you sold out thing, clean shouldn't be in death metal. If it's done good, it can. And Rivers of Nihil prove that with this album and everything else they've ever done. But especially in this album, they have proved that cleans do belong in extreme music. And quite frankly, if cleans and extreme music are going to be delivered to this caliber and this standard, then I absolutely want more of it. It just makes the heavier parts heavier. And that's what everybody wants, is just heavy. And that's what you're going to get with this album. It's heavy, it's beautiful, it's got gorgeous melodies, gorgeous cover art, incredible production. It's easily one of the best albums that they've ever done, and it's a solid, I don't even remember the scale I used, but it's like a 10 out of 10 album, 9 out of 10, I would say. If you're being realistic, not everything gets a perfect score, nothing's perfect, etc., but easily a 9 out of 10 album. Hands down. I would say it's in close competition with Where Owls Know My Name in being my favourite Rivers of Nihil album. This one might just beat it because it feels so rejuvenated, so alive, and it screams a band that's confident. And who knows where the rest of their career is going to go? That's the thing, we don't know where the rest of their career is going to go. But either way, I'm stoked to be in this journey, and I can't wait to hear more. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this review, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, feed the algorithm, all that shite. Make sure you follow me on Instagram as well, at Sir Edward the Hoon King. I know I need to update that in my YouTube outro. I'll get around to that eventually, but I'll have everything Rivers of Nihil linked below. You'll find their tour dates, you'll find merch stores, where to get the album, all that good stuff. Get this album. I think that's the best way I can sum it up, is just get this album. Rivers of Nihil.